Violette1st, The Anderson Family Vacation Gone Wrong 3.0. Introduction. Hello, welcome to another story. This is all about the Violette1st family going on a vacation. This is extremely funny, this took a while to make. This is a revamp to the other Violette1st vacation stories. Just watching it means a lot to me. Right before the story begins, I have some information I would like to explain. Main characters, Violette, Bill and William. Violette is the mother, Bill is the father. William is Violette and Bill's teenage son. Warning and recommendation: if you find the following topics make you feel uncomfortable, then click off this video immediately. Those topics are guns, arson, blowing stuff up, cursing, fighting, random destruction, physical harm, punishment days, and the mentions of people saying sus remarks. Then click off the video. I am only making this video for entertainment purposes only. One quick thing: if I refer to something called the boys, I am referring to Bill and William. I am using this as a shorter term. That is all I have to say. Enjoy the story. Plot: it is a peaceful winter in Mount Airy, Maryland. It is early afternoon. Violette is napping on the couch and William is raging his brains out at his Xbox. Bill is walking into the house. Violette then wakes up. A few seconds later, William wanders downstairs for a snack. A few seconds later, Bill hands Violette and William slips of paper. Bill tells them they are going on a vacation to Florida for 1 month. Violette and William scream with excitement. Bill then says their cab is coming in 30 minutes. A few seconds later, Bill hands William his assignments that he will have to do. Bill then tells William he has to stay caught up in his 9 academic classes. William then looks at Violette. 2 seconds later, Violette and William get up. 1 second later, they race down the basement stairs. A few seconds later, Violette and William speed upstairs with neon yellow suitcases. A few seconds later, Violette gives Bill a suitcase. Then the Anderson family start to pack their clothes. 8 minutes later, Violette and the boys race downstairs. A few seconds later, Violette races down to the basement. A minute later, Violette flies upstairs with 4 neon yellow suitcases. A few seconds later, Violette and the boys start to pack other essential items. 15 minutes later, Violette and the boys lock up the house. 3 minutes later, their be-driven van pulls up in front of their house. A few seconds later, Violette and the boys help the driver put their 7 neon yellow suitcases into the van. A few minutes later, the van driver and the Anderson family speed off to JFK. A few hours later, Violette and the boys walk into JFK. A few seconds later, Violette and the boys check in. An hour later, they drop their luggage off. 12 minutes later, they pass through security safely. A few minutes later, they find their gate. An hour later, they board the plane. 20 minutes later, they take off. 4 hours later, they collect their 7 neon yellow suitcases. 3 minutes later, Violette and the boys breathe in the delicious air of Florida. A few minutes later, they rent a Tesla. 10 minutes later, they speed off to their hotel. 30 minutes later, they check in. 10 minutes later, they park the SUV in a parking lot. 4 minutes later, they walk into their room. A few seconds later, they start unpacking. 15 minutes later, they head to bed. 8 hours later, Violette wakes up. A few seconds later, Violette walks into the kitchen. 10 minutes later, Violette shouts for the boys. 2 minutes later, Violette and William each tuck into some protein shakes for breakfast. A few seconds later, Violette hands Bill a bowl of parfait. Bill screams at the top of his lungs. 10 seconds later, Bill throws his breakfast off the 8th floor. A few seconds later, Violette explodes at Bill. Bill then walks into the kitchen. Violette then tells Bill he needs to get ready for the day. A few seconds later, Violette and the boys get ready. 20 minutes later, Violette tells the boys they are going skydiving. Bill then perks up when he realizes he can push Violette out of the airplane because of the parfait. Violette then says they are leaving now. 2 seconds later, Violette and the boys walk down to the Tesla. 3 minutes later, Violette and the boys speed off to an airport. 1 hour later, Violette and the boys check in. 30 minutes later, their plane takes off. 20 minutes later, Violette and the boys line up with 3 other people. 3 seconds later, Violette puts her parachute on. Violette then gets ready. 3 seconds later, Bill picks up Violette. 4 seconds later, Bill throws Violette out of the plane. Violette starts screaming very loudly. Bill then pushes William off the plane for no reason. William then starts praying because he wasn't able to get his parachute on. A few seconds later, Bill dies. A minute later, William and Violette try clinging to each other. 2 minutes later, William hugs Violette for life. Violette then deploys the parachute. 2 seconds later, Bill speeds past Violette and William. 3 minutes later, Bill deploys his parachute. 8 minutes later, Bill safely lands next to the terminal from where they boarded. A few minutes later, Bill sees Violette and William slowly floating down. 4 minutes later, Violette and William safely land. Violette then takes her parachute off. Violette and William then see Bill. 3 seconds later, Bill starts running. Violette and William start chasing Bill. 10 minutes later, Violette and the boys arrive at the Tesla. A few seconds later, Bill sits on a bench. 1 minute later, Violette and William throw Bill to the floor. A few seconds later, Bill asks for lunch. Violette says they are going to a Chinese food buffet for lunch. Bill then gets up. 3 minutes later, Violette and the boys speed off to the buffet. 10 minutes later, Violette parks the SUV. A few seconds later, Bill swings his door open, into a stranger's car. Violette then watches Bill speed off. Violette then walks over to see the damages. A few seconds later, Violette sees the extent of how hard Bill swung the Tesla door open. A few seconds later, the owner of the wrecked car walks up. He then sees the extent of what happened. Violette then explains her awful husband did it. Violette, William and the stranger walk into the buffet. 2 minutes later, Violette sees Bill is shoving fistfuls of pasta into his mouth. A few seconds later, Bill looks up. Bill then explains he ate 7 pounds of food. A few seconds later, Violette punches Bill's jaw. Bill yelps in pain. A few seconds later Violette explains to Bill what he did when he ran into the buffet. A few seconds later Bill runs into the kitchen. A few seconds later Bill runs out with a 30-pound bag of flour. A minute later Bill screams with pure anger while he rips the bag apart. A few seconds later Bill slams the bag onto the floor. Less than a second later flour explodes everywhere. Then a massive cloud of flour quickly fills the buffet. Violette and William then drag Bill out of the buffet. 2 minutes later they speed back to the hotel they are staying at. 10 minutes later Violette and the boys walk into their family suite. A few seconds later Violette slaps Bill for wasting 30 pounds of raw flour. 3 seconds later Violette asks why she was pushed off the airplane. Bill says it was revenge for the parfait. Violette looks at Bill with utter confusion. 2 seconds later Violette looks at Bill with utter frustration. Bill then walks away. A few seconds later William starts playing Minecraft. 10 seconds later William gets eliminated from fall damage. 1 second later William crashes onto his bed. A few seconds later William starts peacefully playing Minecraft. A few seconds later Bill walks into William's hotel room with some of William's assignments from MAHS. A few seconds later William powers down his Xbox. 20 seconds later William grabs the papers. 1 minute later William places the assignments in the sink. William then turns the faucet on. A few seconds later William's assignments start dissolving. A few seconds later William tells Violette he is never doing those lousy useless assignments. Violette then screams with utter anger. William then starts pleading. Violette slaps William's face with all her might. A few seconds later a red hand imprint appears on William's face. A few seconds later Bill walks into the kitchen to see what the commotion is. Bill then screams with anger when he sees the sink. Bill then kicks William's booty. William yelps in pain. Violette then laughs her head off. A few seconds later William walks back to his bedroom. 2 minutes later William starts screeching scary death threats at his Xbox. A few seconds later a manager walks into the family suite where the family is staying. The manager then walks into William's bedroom. Violette and Bill then walk in. A few seconds later the manager tells Violette the family is getting a strike. The manager then says if they get 3 strikes they would be kicked out of the hotel. Bill looks at William. William then shuts his pie hole. A few seconds later the manager leaves. Violette and Bill then start scolding William. A few seconds later William pushes his parents out of his hotel room. Violette and Bill then walk away. 2 seconds later William's Fortnite teammate accidentally kills William in game. William then screams you are a worthless, ugly, useless bastard. No one loves you, stop existing or else I will hunt you down in real life. Then break into your house at 2 AM to do something. You are wretched, go bleep off. Nobody cares about you. I am going. Violette then barges into William's bedroom. Violette then starts scolding William. William tries lying. 3 seconds later Violette growls at William. William then screams with pure anger. A few seconds later Violette walks away. William then resumes raging. 2 minutes later William gets eliminated again. William then throws a lamp at the TV. 1 second later the lamp crashes into the TV. 2 seconds later the TV slams onto the floor. Violette then feels it. 2 seconds later Violette speeds to William's room. 3 seconds later Violette sees the lamp and TV. Violette then sighs with sadness. A few seconds later Bill walks into William's bedroom. A few seconds later Bill screams with horror. Violette then screams with pure anger. A few seconds later Violette stomps away. 2 minutes later Violette tells William he is going to be grounded when they return home. A few seconds later William says he will do anything to make up for the TV and lamp. Violette then perks up. A few seconds later Violette tells William he has to do 28 chores a day for 4 months. William then screams with horror. Violette and Bill then walk away. A few seconds later Violette starts cooking dinner, while the boys take a nap. 20 minutes later Violette calls for the boys. A few seconds later Bill sprints into the kitchen. Violette then hands Bill a bowl of pulled pork. Bill perks up. A few seconds later William walks into the kitchen. Violette then hands William a peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwich on burnt toast. Violette then tells William she put hot dogs, Smarties, Cocoa Puffs, goldfish, 2 ounces of random seasonings, pickles, blue rare salmon, spaghetti, garbage stew, rotten pork, party cheese salad, lazy man enchiladas and some baked beans. William then walks to the deck. A few seconds later William throws his sandwich off the deck. Violette then nags and scolds William for his behavior. A few seconds later William starts watching videos on his temporary phone. A few minutes later Violette and Bill start watching TV. 3 hours later Violette and the boys head to bed. 8 hours later Violette wakes up to the sound of glass breaking. Violette then turns her head to see Bill is not in bed. Violette then gets out of bed. She then grabs her whip. 12 seconds later Violette sees a window was broken. Violette then sees Bill with a hammer in his hands. Bill then runs away. 12 seconds later Violette tackles Bill. A few seconds later Bill explains why he smashed a window. A few seconds later Violette drags Bill. A minute later Violette places Bill onto a couch. Violette then starts whipping Bill's booty. A few minutes later William walks into the kitchen. A few seconds later William grabs a box of cereal. William then walks back to his bedroom. A few seconds later William powers up the new TV that was just put in his hotel bedroom. Back in the living room, Violette is starting to whip Bill even harder. 10 minutes later Violette starts whipping Bill as hard as she can. 3 minutes later Violette switches hands. She then starts whipping even harder. 18 minutes later Violette finishes whipping Bill's booty. Bill then walks to the kitchen. 1 minute later Violette walks into the restroom. A few seconds later Bill grabs a gallon jug of vegetable oil. 3 seconds later Bill starts chugging the veggie oil. 2 minutes later Bill finishes chugging. 3 seconds later Violette walks into the kitchen. Bill then knows he is dead meat. A few seconds later Violette roars at Bill for chugging 8 pounds of vegetable oil. Bill then feels a little upset in the stomach region. Bill then grabs a gallon of apple juice. 3 seconds later Violette starts chugging the apple juice. 3 minutes later Bill finishes chugging his apple juice. Bill then confidently says his stomach will be much better. A few seconds later Bill's stomach fluid turns into a hurricane. Bill then runs to the deck. A minute later Bill starts hurling off the deck. 10 minutes later Bill walks back into the hotel suite. Violette then tells Bill to shower. Bill walks to the shower. 20 minutes later Violette turns the living room TV off. She then wanders over to the shower. A few seconds later Violette sees Bill is still in the shower. Violette then says they are going swimming. Bill turns the shower off. Violette then walks over to see William. 10 seconds later Violette sees William is watching Jawtooth on his temporary phone. A few seconds later Violette tells William they are going to go down to the outdoor pool. William perks up. William then closes his bedroom door. 10 minutes later Violette and the boys walk down to the pool. A few minutes later Violette and the boys jump into the pool. 2 hours later Violette and the boys dry off. A few minutes later they order lunch. 3 minutes later Violette roars at Bill for ordering 8 2.5-pound family bundle meals. Bill then says he is starving. A few seconds later Violette sighs. Violette then roars at Bill for ordering 35 pounds of crab. 30 minutes later Bill's food comes out. Bill screams with excitement. A few seconds later Bill starts eating his 8 family meals. A few seconds later Violette and William's thin crust pizza comes out. A few seconds later Violette and William tuck into their pizza. 10 minutes later Violette and William finish eating. They then pay the waiter for their $184 meal. A few minutes later Violette and William jump into the pool while they wait for Bill. Bill then starts chugging 16 liters of pop while forcing 20 pounds of food down his throat. 15 minutes later Violette tells Bill they are leaving. Bill says he is finished. Violette and William then dry off. Bill then puts his shirt on. 2 minutes later Violette tells Bill he is going to be weighed when they get into the hotel room. A few seconds later Violette and the boys walk back to their room. 10 minutes later Violette watches Bill get onto his talking scale. A few seconds later the scale says Bill weighs 266 pounds. Violette then roars at Bill for gaining 96 pounds in about 1 week. Bill then says he likes food. Violette then looks at Bill with utter anger. A few seconds later Violette and Bill walk to the kitchen. A few seconds later Violette hears weird gibberish coming from William's bedroom. A few seconds later Violette walks over to William's bedroom. 3 minutes later Violette finishes nagging William for using death threats. 2 minutes later William powers down his Xbox. A minute later Violette and the boys watch Jawtooth. 5 hours later Violette walks into the kitchen to cook supper. 10 minutes later Violette and the boys tuck into some Kraft mac and cheese and some Ben's original microwavable rice packets. 10 minutes later Violette asks Bill to wash every dish in the sink. Bill then sees dishes are overflowing in the sink. Bill yelps with horror. A few seconds later Bill rips the dishwasher door open. Violette and William guard Bill. A few seconds later Bill starts throwing dishes into the dishwasher. Violette then tells Bill he has to take the rack out. Bill then smashes a dish on the floor. 2 seconds later Violette and William scold Bill while he continues making a complete mess with the dirty dishes. 3 minutes later Bill dumps a gallon of dish soap into the dishwasher. Bill then starts a 3-hour-long cycle. A few seconds later a manager walks into the room. She then tells the Anderson family they got a second strike for Bill's family bundle chaos. She then walks away. Violette then sighs with embarrassment. A few seconds later Violette and William start packing up because they know they are about to be kicked out from Bill's behavior. 10 minutes later Violette and William finish packing the clothes. A few seconds later they walk into the kitchen, only to see a flood of soapy water. A few seconds later Violette shouts for Bill. Bill flies into the kitchen with a vacuum. Bill then starts vacuuming up the bubble ocean. 10 minutes later Violette opens the dishwasher. A few seconds later William starts removing dishes from the dishwasher. 2 minutes later Bill starts vacuuming up the dish fragments and soap out of the dishwasher. A few seconds later the hotel vacuum starts smoking. Violette then unplugs it. Bill then storms away with the vacuum. 20 seconds later a massive crash shakes the hotel. A few seconds later Violette tells Bill it is bedtime. Bill then gives in. A few seconds later Violette and the boys walk to their rooms. 12 hours later Violette and the boys eat some breakfast. A few seconds later the CEO of the hotel barges into the Anderson family hotel room. The CEO then tells the family they are kicked out. Violette and the boys then walk out with their 7 neon yellow suitcases. An hour later they walk into an airport after dropping the Tesla off. 2 hours later they board a flight to Logan Airport. 4 hours later they collect their bags. A few minutes later they get into a cab. 6 hours later Violette and the boys walk into the house after a crazy vacation gone wrong. A few minutes later Violette and the boys finish unpacking. They then have a snack. 10 minutes later Violette and the boys head to sleep. The end. Conclusion. Hello there, I hope you enjoyed this vacation from heck. The 4th installment will have 2 weeks of chaos. The family won't be kicked out in the 4th installment, so it should be about the length of 20k words. More stories to come. Bye for now.